Amy Fleming stood in the quiet of the barn, her fingers gently brushing the familiar wood of the stable door. The place she had always called home, the place that held so many memories, was now the backdrop to one of the most difficult decisions of her life. It wasn't just about horses anymore. It was about her future, her heart, and the man who had been a part of it all. Nathan Grant, the man she had once dreamed of building a life with, was slowly becoming a distant figure in her life. The spark they once shared seemed to be flickering, and no matter how hard she tried, Amy couldn't seem to find a way to keep the flames of their relationship alive. For months, things between them had felt different. The quiet moments that once made her feel safe and loved were now filled with tension. Nathan, the once steadfast and loyal man by her side, was becoming someone she didn't fully recognize anymore. His eyes, once full of love and hope, now often seemed distant, lost in thoughts that Amy couldn't reach. They had been through so much together, the ups and downs, the heartaches and the triumphs. But this time, it felt different. It felt like the walls between them were growing higher, and the space between their hearts was widening. Amy couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that had been building inside her for weeks. She had tried to ignore it, pushed it aside, and convinced herself that everything would eventually fall back into place. But deep down, she knew that things had changed. Her relationship with Nathan wasn't the same anymore. She had always prided herself on her ability to see the best in people, to believe that things would get better, but this time, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were both heading in different directions. As she stood there, lost in thought, a familiar voice broke through the silence. It was Lou, her sister, who had been by her side through every twist and turn of her life. Lou had always been the practical one, the one who could see things from a distance and offer advice without getting too emotionally involved. "Are you okay?" Lou's voice was soft, but Amy could hear the concern in it. Amy nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking." Lou stepped closer, her expression more serious now. "Amy, I know something's been off between you and Nathan for a while. You're not fooling anyone, so what's going on?" Amy hesitated for a moment, but she knew Lou wouldn't stop until she got the truth. She took a deep breath and looked at her sister. "I don't know what's happening. It's like we're drifting apart. I love him, I really do, but it's like we've lost our way. He's not the man I thought I knew." Lou was silent for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "Have you talked to him about it? Really talked to him?" "I've tried," Amy admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "But it's like we're speaking different languages. We're not hearing each other anymore. He's so focused on everything else, his work, his past. And I feel like I'm fading into the background." Lou placed a comforting hand on her sister's shoulder. "Amy, you can't keep carrying all of this alone. You need to figure out what's best for you, even if it's hard. But don't let this go on for too long. It's not fair to either of you." Amy knew her sister was right, but the decision was hard, so hard. How could she walk away from the man she had once pictured a future with? How could she leave behind the life they had built together, even if it felt like everything was slowly falling apart? The thought weighed heavily on her heart. But then Amy remembered something her mother had once told her. Sometimes love isn't enough to keep a relationship together. You need trust, understanding, and the willingness to fight for it. Amy had always believed in that. But now she was starting to wonder if Nathan was willing to fight for their relationship, or if he had already given up without even realizing it. That night, as she lay in bed, her thoughts racing, Amy made up her mind. She couldn't keep living like this, always wondering where they stood. She needed clarity, and she needed it now. The next morning, she called Nathan. There was no turning back now. She had to face the truth, even if it meant breaking her own heart. Nathan answered the phone after the second ring, his voice warm, but there was a hint of tension. "Amy? Hey, is everything okay?" Amy took a deep breath. This was it. "We need to talk," she said softly. "About us." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Nathan replied, his voice quieter now. "Okay, I'll be there in an hour." An hour felt like a lifetime to Amy. She sat in the living room, her hands trembling as she waited for Nathan to arrive. She didn't know what she would say when he got there, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. She couldn't keep waiting for something to change on its own. When Nathan walked through the door, Amy stood up, her heart racing in her chest. She could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the same uncertainty she had been feeling for so long. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Amy nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I don't know if we can fix this, Nathan. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, but I can't keep pretending anymore." Nathan looked down, the weight of her words sinking in. "I never wanted to hurt you, Amy. I've just been lost." Amy nodded, her voice breaking. "I know, but sometimes love isn't enough." Nathan's eyes flickered with sadness. "So, what do we do now?" Amy's heart ached as she looked at the man she had once thought she would spend forever with. But she knew that sometimes walking away was the only way to move forward. The air was thick with anticipation as Amy and Nathan sat in the living room. The space that had once felt so warm now felt cold and unfamiliar. Every inch of the room seemed to echo their silence, filled with the unsaid words and unresolved emotions that had been lingering for far too long. The weight of Amy's decision hung in the air, making it almost impossible to breathe. Nathan sat across from Amy, his eyes searching her face for any sign of the woman he thought he knew. The person who had been his constant, his rock. But now he was starting to feel the distance between them, like a chasm that was growing wider with every passing second. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in, and for the first time in a long while, Nathan was uncertain about where their relationship stood. "Amy?" Nathan's voice broke through the silence, but it was laced with hesitation, as if he was afraid of the answer he was about to hear. "What are you trying to say?" "I can feel that something's off. You've been distant, and Amy shook her head, cutting him off gently. "Nathan, I can't keep going like this. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not." She paused, her voice trembling. "I think we've both been pretending for far too long." Nathan's gaze dropped to his hands, his mind racing. He had always prided himself on being strong, dependable, but right now, he felt anything but. He had been so focused on keeping things together, on trying to fix everything, that he hadn't noticed how far they had drifted apart. Amy was right. They had been drifting, and neither of them had taken the time to stop and address it. "You're not happy," Nathan said quietly, more to himself than to Amy. "I can see it in your eyes." Amy nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't know when it started, Nathan, but somewhere along the way, we lost each other. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I feel like I'm losing you." The room was heavy with the weight of her words, each one landing with the force of a truth neither of them wanted to face. Nathan felt his heart sinking, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He had always believed in them, believed that they could weather any storm. But this was different. This was the kind of pain that couldn't be healed, with a simple apology or a promise of change. "I don't want to lose you," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked up at Amy, his eyes filled with vulnerability. "But if you're telling me that we can't fix this, I don't know what to do." Amy's heart broke at the sight of him. The man she had once pictured a future with, now standing before her, as lost as she felt. "I don't want to lose you either," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "But sometimes, loving someone isn't enough to keep it all together. We need more than love to make this work. We need trust, understanding, and the willingness to fight for it. And right now, I don't think either of us knows how to fight for what we once had." Nathan stood up, pacing the room, his mind reeling. He had never felt this helpless before. He had always been the one to step in and fix things, to be the problem solver, the protector. But this wasn't something he could fix with a quick solution. This was a fracture in their relationship that ran deep, too deep to heal with just a few words. "You're saying it's over?" Nathan's voice cracked, the pain unmistakable. Amy closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. I don't know, Nathan. I don't know what to call this, but I can't keep living in this uncertainty, not knowing where we stand. I need to figure things out, and I need space to do that. Nathan stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto hers. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, everything was flooding back. But beneath it all, there was something more. A fear of losing her. So, you're just going to walk away? Just like that? Amy took a deep breath. I'm not walking away, I need time to figure out who I am without this hanging over me. I can't keep living in this limbo. I've tried, Nathan, but I don't know if we can fix what's broken. The silence that followed was deafening. Amy's heart felt like it was in a vice, the ache in her chest a constant reminder of the choice she had just made. But as much as it hurt, she knew deep down that it was the right decision. She couldn't keep holding on to something that was slipping through her fingers. Nathan stood frozen, his expression one of disbelief. It was as if the world had suddenly tilted on its axis, leaving him uncertain of everything. He had spent so long trying to hold on to the idea of them, of the life they had built, that he hadn't realized how much they had both changed. He couldn't bear the thought of losing Amy, but he also couldn't deny that something was missing. Okay, Nathan finally said, his voice hoarse. I'll give you space. But I need you to know, Amy, that I'm not giving up on us. Not yet. Amy looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. I'm not giving up either. I need to figure out who I am, who we are, without all this confusion. Nathan nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He didn't know if they could come back from this, but he wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. As he left, the door closed behind him with a quiet finality that echoed through Amy's chest. She stood there for a moment, her mind spinning, but a small part of her knew that this was just the beginning of something that would change everything. The days that followed were a blur of emotions for both Amy and Nathan. The barn, once a place of solace and connection, now felt like a distant memory. Amy found herself wandering through the fields, her heart torn between the life she had always known and the unknown future that stretched before her. Every corner of Heartland seemed to hold the weight of her decision. She had walked away, but could she really leave everything behind? Nathan, on the other hand, had retreated into himself. The man who had once been so sure, so confident, was now grappling with the emptiness that Amy's absence had left in his life. He tried to focus on work, to bury his emotions under the weight of daily tasks, but it wasn't working. He felt like he was suffocating, trapped in a life that felt all too familiar yet completely foreign, without Amy by his side. The connection they had shared seemed like a distant dream, one that had slipped through his fingers before he could hold on to it. Despite the silence that hung between them, Amy knew that she had to make the next move. She couldn't leave things like this. The uncertainty, the unanswered questions, it was slowly eating at her from the inside out. She needed clarity, she needed closure, not just for herself, but for Nathan as well. One morning, after days of self-reflection, Amy knew it was time to confront the truth. She couldn't hide anymore, couldn't keep running from the emotions that had haunted her. She needed to see Nathan, to talk things through, even if it meant facing the painful reality of what they had become. The decision to reach out wasn't easy. Amy had always been the one to find the strength in situations, the one who could face challenges head-on. But this was different. This was more than just a fight. This was the unraveling of everything she had believed in. She had spent so long clinging to the hope that things would get better, but now she wasn't sure if that was even possible. She called Nathan, the words catching in her throat. "Nathan, can we meet? I think it's time we talked." Nathan's response was immediate, almost too quick. "Of course, Amy. I've been waiting for you to reach out. I've missed you." His voice was softer than she had heard in days, and for a brief moment, Amy felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for them. They agreed to meet at their favorite spot by the river, the place where they had shared so many quiet moments, the place where they had fallen in love. It felt like the right place, the right Time. But as Amy stood by the water, waiting for Nathan to arrive, she couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation would be different. The calm surface of the river mirrored her emotions. On the outside, everything appeared still, but beneath the surface, turmoil raged. When Nathan finally arrived, his face was unreadable, and Amy couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. They were supposed to be happy, together. But here they were, standing on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. Amy. Nathan started, his voice steady, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realized that I don't want to lose you. But I don't know if we can go back to what we had. Can we? Amy's heart skipped a beat. Was this the opening she had been waiting for? Or was it just more of the same uncertainty that had plagued their relationship? I don't know, Nathan, Amy said softly, her voice full of doubt. I want to believe we can, but I also need to be honest with myself. We've both changed, and I don't know if we're the same people anymore. The words hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. He had been so sure, so desperate to hold on to the woman he had fallen in love with. But now, standing here in the reality of their broken relationship, he wasn't so sure. But I'm still here, Nathan insisted, stepping closer. I'm still willing to fight for us. If you'll let me. We've been through so much, Amy. I don't want this to be the end. Amy felt the pull in her heart, the longing for the life they had shared, but she couldn't ignore the reality of what was happening. She had spent so long waiting for things to get better, hoping that the love they once had would be enough to fix everything. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for them to face the truth. That love, no matter how strong, wasn't always enough to hold two people together. I don't know, Nathan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything will magically go back to the way it was. I don't want to hurt you, but I also don't want to keep living in a dream that's already faded. Nathan's face tightened with emotion, the weight of her words sinking in. He took a step back, as though the distance between them had become even more tangible. The pain of realizing that their love might not be enough to fix everything was almost too much to bear. I can't make you love me, Amy, he said, his voice breaking. But I still love you. I don't know how to let go. Amy's heart broke for him. She could see the raw, unfiltered pain in his eyes, the same pain she felt every day. But despite all the love they had shared, despite the years of memories, she couldn't ignore the truth. They were no longer the people they once were, we. Both need time, Amy said gently. Time to figure out who we are, with or without each other. The river beside them rushed by, a reminder that time, no matter how painful, continued to move forward. Amy didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing: they couldn't keep living in the past. They needed to find their own paths, separate or together. In this part, Amy and Nathan confront the heartbreaking truth of their fractured relationship. Their raw emotions and the uncertainty of their future create a powerful moment that could change the course of their lives. Will they find their way back to each other, or is this the end of their story? The question remains unanswered, leaving both characters and the audience wondering what comes next. The days following that fateful meeting by the river were filled with an eerie quiet. Neither Amy nor Nathan knew how to move forward, and the weight of their silence loomed over Heartland like a dark cloud. Amy spent most of her time lost in the barn, tending to the horses as if they could somehow heal the part of her that felt broken. The rhythmic movements of grooming and feeding brought a sense of calm, but it wasn't enough to fill the void that Nathan's absence had left. For Nathan, the days were even harder. He buried himself in work, pretending that everything was fine, but there was no escaping the reality of Amy's words. The woman he had once shared his dreams with was now a stranger to him, someone whose heart seemed to have drifted away, and Nathan was left struggling to find his place in a world that no longer felt like his own. The memories of their shared laughter, their long talks in the quiet of the night, seemed like distant echoes that could never be recaptured. But as the days wore on, both of them began to realize something. Neither of them could move on without understanding what had truly happened between them. The unresolved emotions, the unspoken words had been building up for too long, and now there was no choice but to face the truth head-on. It was Amy who reached out first, unable to ignore the aching need for closure, for understanding. She knew that if they were ever going to heal, they needed to have one final conversation to confront everything that had gone wrong. She sent Nathan a simple text. "Can we meet? We need to talk." Nathan's response came almost immediately. "I've been waiting for you to say that." They agreed to meet in the same spot by the river, the place where everything had started for them, the place where their love had first blossomed. It felt like the right place for what was about to happen, even if the future seemed uncertain. When Nathan arrived, he looked different, more vulnerable, more open, and yet still carrying the weight of the past. Amy noticed it immediately. There was no anger in his eyes, no blame, just the raw, unfiltered pain of a man who had loved deeply and was now grappling with the possibility that it wasn't enough. Amy took a deep breath before speaking. "Nathan, I've thought about this a lot, and I've realized that I need to be honest with myself and with you. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, but I don't want to walk away from you completely. I think we both need time to heal, to figure out who we are, with or without each other." Nathan nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't want to lose you, Amy, but I've realized that maybe I've been holding on to something that was already slipping away. I love you, but I don't know if I can keep fighting if I'm the only one doing it." Amy looked at him, her heart aching for the man who had once been her world. "You're not the only one fighting, Nathan. But sometimes, fighting for something doesn't mean you have to stay in it when it's no longer right for either of you. I think we both need to find our own paths now. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go, at least for now." The river behind them flowed peacefully, almost symbolizing the passage of time, the constant movement that couldn't be stopped, no matter how hard they tried to hold on. They both knew that nothing would ever be the same again, but that didn't mean it was the end. They had shared too much, loved too deeply, for it to be so easily forgotten. "I understand," Nathan said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I think I've always known this day would come, but I just wanted to hold on a little longer. I don't want to lose you, Amy." Tears welled up in Amy's eyes, but she didn't look away. "You won't lose me, but sometimes love isn't enough to keep us together. We need more than that, Nathan. And right now, I need to find who I am again." They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared understanding settling over them like a blanket. It wasn't goodbye, not really. It was just a pause. A moment of clarity. A chance for them to grow, separately, before they could ever hope to come back together, if that was even meant to be. Finally, Nathan took a step forward and placed his hand on Amy's shoulder, his touch gentle, but full of meaning. "I don't know what the future holds, Amy, but I do know one thing. I'll always care about you. And I'll always be here no matter what." Amy nodded, her heart full of mixed emotions. "I know, Nathan. And I'll always care about you too. I just need to find myself first." With that, they shared a final, lingering look before turning, away from the river, from each other, and walking in opposite directions. The future was uncertain, and neither of them knew where it would take them. But for the first time in a long while, Amy felt a small sense of peace. She wasn't sure if she would ever find her way back to Nathan, but for now, she was okay with the uncertainty. Sometimes the hardest decisions led to the most unexpected paths. In this final section, Amy and Nathan come to terms with the difficult truth about their relationship. They share a moment of closure, understanding that love, while powerful, isn't always enough to keep two people together. Their journey is far from over, but this is a turning point, a moment of personal growth and acceptance. The story ends on a bittersweet note, with hope for the future, but no guarantees. It's a reminder that sometimes letting go is the only way forward. Final section. Update. Heartland. Season 19. Amy's surprise move that might break. Nathan, as Amy and Nathan walked their separate ways, the weight of the conversation lingered in the air. It was a moment neither of them would ever forget, one that would change them forever, whether they realized it now or not. In the days that followed, the silence was deafening. Neither of them knew exactly what to do with the space between them, but deep down, they knew it was necessary. For Amy, the road ahead was unclear, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. Not because she had all the answers, but because she was finally being honest with herself. Nathan, too, was struggling to make sense of everything. He had loved Amy with all his heart, and part of him still believed that they could work things out, that they could find their way back to each other. But he was also beginning to realize that sometimes, love wasn't about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting go and allowing each person the space to figure out who they were outside of their relationship. Days turned into weeks, and as the seasons shifted, so did their lives. Amy poured herself into her work, her horses, and the ranch. She focused on herself, learning to live with the quiet moments that had once seemed so overwhelming. She found peace in the things that had always grounded her: family, animals, and the wide, open spaces of Heartland. Meanwhile, Nathan found himself at a crossroads, trying to rebuild his life and figure out who he was without Amy by his side. He spent time working with horses, leaning on his friends, and taking long walks by the river, just like the one where they had shared their final conversation. In those quiet moments, he began to come to terms with the fact that the person he had been before Amy would need to be rediscovered. He wasn't sure if he was ready to move on, but he knew one thing: he couldn't keep holding on to the past. As the months passed, Amy and Nathan's lives moved in different directions. But their story was far from over. They hadn't reached the end, but maybe they weren't meant to find the answers right now. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where they each found their individual paths, no longer defined by what had been, but by what was yet to come. Looking for more heartfelt moments from Heartland? Want to know what happens next for Amy, Nathan, and the rest of the Heartland family? Subscribe to our channels and follow us on Nextdoor for exclusive updates, behind-the-scenes content, and deeper dives into the relationships that define this beloved show. Get access to special insights and keep up with all the emotional twists and turns that await in the next season. Stay tuned and be part of the Heartland journey. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more updates.